everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Faitheism Project podcast. This is season 2, episode 18. My name is Alan Katz, and I have always been grateful to Hebrew Skull and some chicken soup for making me the atheist I am today.
And my name is Randy Lovejoy, and I have stepped outside of the church to help people move further inside of the faith. And as always, it is great to be here with you, Alan.
Food, glorious food is what we're...
Hot sausage and mustard while you're in the mood. Cold jelly and custard, peas pudding and saveloy. What next is the question? Rich gentlemen have it, boys, indigestion. Anyway, I was in Oliver Twist in elementary school, actually, and it that stuck in my brain. So there you go.
Funny how that is, isn't it?
Maybe that should be our theme song to start off the show. You know, what do you think? Me singing it, because you know.
Absolutely, I'm so there. I've no doubts the rights will cost a song for the song.
That's right.
Anyway, so yes, we're talking about food, and gosh, it's
one of my favorite subjects, I gotta say.
We'll talk favorite foods, strangest foods, least favorite foods, foods you cannot fathom other people sticking in their heads. Where do you begin with a topic this tasty?
Yeah, you know, I wonder if we should start as far back as we can remember and say, so Alan, what was your favorite baby food, or at least as far back as you can go? So do you have any memories going back?
The first strong food memories are not positive.
Well, that could be if it was like one of those spinach yam blended to a mush. Yeah. That might be why, but
I remember, I must have been 6 or 7, and the Bird's Eye Company was had a new line of international frozen vegetables.
Yes.
And there was a Danish one, and there was a Parisian one, and an Italian one.
Yeah.
And you know, so my mom, back in the 60s when I was growing up, this was how one experienced vegetables.
That's right.
I don't think I saw many fresh vegetables. I don't recall seeing a whole lot of fresh vegetables when I was a youth. But those frozen and then defrosted and then heated up zucchini and eggplant are unattractive.
No, man, to say the least.
They made a lasting impression upon my palate.
Of what not to eat. This is not what I'm after.
Now, I mean, I'm a vegetable person for the most part, although I like my vegetables to be toothsome, shall we say.
Yep. Al dente.
You know,
because that kind of I had to flash back to at least junior high with the frozen dinners. And I remember my least favorite was the Salisbury steak, which I was never sure what that was actually made of, because the consistency was not steak. It's I don't know what this is. But
I want to know which Salisbury is taking credit for this.
That's true. Or
which of you is to blame for this?
I just wonder, was there a guy named Salisbury that did something so mean to the owner of the company that they said, we're going to call this Salisbury steak? I don't know.
When Lord Salisbury first thought of his steak, his chop steak with some sauce upon it, it was a delicious idea.
Yeah. One would imagine that you were supposed to drink some Guinness beforehand, and then you wouldn't notice what the steak was actually like. I don't know. But I do remember, I remember that there was sort of a little bit of joy wondering what the dessert was going to be, because a lot of times it was covered over with some kind of pastry or something covered over. And so you kind of dig in and you're like, oh, strawberry, or, well, I guess it was cherry. Oh, cherry, or, oh, peach. But then, when the Hungry Man ones came out, I always wanted Hungry Man because you actually got more food because I was always still hungry after the TV dinners. But those are still not fond memories. Not fond memories. Is there any frozen food at all that you like? Even today, let's say, anything frozen that you would say, this isn't bad?
Yeah, TJ's, Trader Joe's makes a couple of there's some frozen Indian products that
those aren't bad, are they? Yeah,
those are quite good. A frozen burrito never compares to the one I can get off the taco truck right on my corner.
Yeah.
It's one of the joys of living in Los Angeles.
True.
Is
so true.
Food.
Yeah.
And this was not the case not that long ago.
Yeah.
When I first arrived in Los Angeles in 1985, this was not a food destination.
Really?
Oh, wow. My God, no. Oh, God, no.
I did not know that.
This was a wasteland.
Okay.
Oh, there was the big restaurants were the real famous ones in Beverly Hills and West Hollywood, like Dan Tana's and Scandia,
right?
Which served big gloppy food, that our parents thought was food.
Yes.
And then there was that explosion up in Northern California, Alice Waters, and then when Wolfgang Puck opened his first restaurant down here, and suddenly, prior to that, there was the Pacific Dining Car. Was where there were two locations, and what they served was big hunks of really nice steak.
Right.
For like $50, $60. Aside from that, downtown Los Angeles, there was Chinatown, but that was not anything in particular. There was a little Tokyo, but the restaurants there were not seen as anything in particular.
Interesting.
And there was a place called God, I just went up on the name. There was one place downtown, and and the food was mediocre, but it was the only place that was open after 6:00, and there was a parking lot right next to it. And if you couldn't get into the parking lot and you had to park on the street, you weren't going there. Because it was just the neighborhood was too dangerous.
Yeah.
Downtown.
No, I hear that. Yeah, that's interesting because
it completely changed in LA. Whoa.
That's interesting because I didn't get here until in the 90s. And I'd say by then, there were still some interesting places. I remember though that there's a barbecue place I tried, and being a Texan, I have had barbecue. And that was not barbecue. I don't know what it was, but it was like, what the heck is this? Now they've improved. There's some places that are better at it now than there were. But that's interesting because, at least when I moved to Silver Lake, it was amazing. I mean, that was right after 9/11, but by that time, there were just so many great restaurants, and it was
already happening. Yeah.
But when I visited other parts of LA, though, it was like, oh my gosh, I've got such a great place to live, because in the other places, it was like, if I was having a lunch meeting, it's like, there's a Denny's, there's a Starbucks, there's a whatever, but it was pretty boring. And then I'm like, I want to go back to, to the Silver Lake Echo Park area, because man, there's all sorts of amazing things and a lot of people trying new stuff on a regular basis, which made it really, really fun, really fun. So, I mean, what's a favorite place of yours in LA today? A favorite restaurant or place to go eat? Or,
we're in this house, we're very fond of tonkatsu ramen.
Okay. Yeah.
And this is ramen that is it is pork broth. The tonkatsu is pork broth that's been cooked usually for at least 18 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that the broth itself assumes it's because it's the bones have been cooked so long that the broth assumes a creamy texture. And it is It is quite unlike anything. It's unlike anything else. And then, of course, there are noodles in it. There's, gosh, usually an egg, bean sprouts. There can be all kinds of things. A little bit of seaweed. It is a meal in a bowl. It's usually more than a little fella like me can do a whole bowl of it. But it is filling. It fills your belly, but it fills your senses.
Yes.
It's the broth, but then you've got the noodles, and especially if the noodles are good and they're toothsome, so there's a little feel to it, and then the quality of the egg and what the egg adds to it, because the egg isn't completely cooked inside. So the yolk is done. It is such a sensual experience. There's a Japanese movie from the 90s called Tampopo, which was about the search for the perfect bowl of ramen in Tokyo. And it's such a fun movie, really, because it's just about the joy of a great bowl of ramen, and how important all these different pieces of it are. That when it was first thought of, those who really cared, yes, there's this piece and that piece and this piece and that piece and all these pieces put together. If they're just so, there's a kind of working man's perfection.
Yes.
That you can have every day. And there's nothing, since, hey, you got to eat.
That's right.
It becomes the pursuit of, hey, if you got to eat, why not make as many times as you got to eat be, well, that was special.
Exactly. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
You have traveled all over the world. You've lived all over the world, not just traveled, you've lived.
Yeah.
And you've been places where refrigeration was not necessarily a given, shall we say?
Thing,
And so that's going to impact your food choices. Now, all right, let's walk a little culinary history.
Sure.
You came from Texas, right? That's where you started out.
Yeah.
Right. When you started out, what was the food tradition you came out of?
Definitely steaks were part of it, just because my grandfather was, sure. He was a geologist, but he had some ranch land with some cattle of his own. So whenever we'd go visit, he'd have a freezer full from, one cow. It's massive amounts of meat. So he'd have all these steaks in there and different parts of the cow that we would eat. And that was good. But we'd also catch, I remember fresh fish. There was a tank, we called it, because it was a man-made pond that was there that had fish in it. So we'd go early in the morning and we'd catch perch, catfish, that kind of stuff. And then we'd actually clean them ourselves. My mom would cook them up. And so we'd have fresh fish, eggs, and jalapeno hush puppies for breakfast, like for brunch, basically. And that was good. I remember that going way back. But that speaking of the jalapeno hush puppies, that Mexican influence was always there from early on in our food. It would show up in different ways, in some kind of a dish that that my mom would add something from the Mexican influence in Texas. So that would be there too. And we went out for Tex-Mex food then, which has certainly improved a lot since then. At that time it was like, do you want 2 tacos or 2 enchiladas with your rice and beans? It was kind of like limited to that, which we liked. But since then, things have opened up quite a bit, thankfully, for good Mexican food.
At the holidays, what would the family serve? What would they enjoy together?
Yeah, well, definitely, Thanksgiving would always have turkey, and then dressing, we would call it, not stuffing. We never use that word, but dressing. And then giblet gravy, which would include, the different like gizzard and liver and all that stuff.
Sure.
That would all be there. And then my mom would make these
You ever
cheese.
did you ever eat the gizzard by itself? You ever eating gizzards?
Oh yeah. And my mom would make tongue. We had tongue regularly. We had sweetbreads, which are the pancreas, in a cream sauce over rice that, you never thought about it being a pancreas. You just ate it. It was amazing, as she cooked it. So, and she grew up eating all those different kinds of things because she was up in the panhandle of Texas. So, but also like okra. We had a lot of okra, had a lot of beets, those kind of things that I think weren't as common around here, at least through my wife's family. They just really didn't mess around with those much. But we had grits, okra, beets, all that kind of stuff, which I guess is more of a Southern influence, I would think.
Yes. Okay.
So
before you headed off into the rest of the world, that was the food. That was the food that you came from.
Definitely. Okay. Yes.
Your first stop was England?
Australia.
Okay. I'll someday I'll get this right.
That's all right. That's all right.
So, was that any kind of a shock to your food system?
We tried, I'm pretty sure I've got this right. I think it's Marmite in Australia and Vegemite in England, but I may have it the wrong way around. I don't know. But I remember we thought, this is kind of like their version of peanut butter. So I remember all of us taking a spoonful, like we would do with peanut butter, and sticking it in our mouths. And we were like spitting that out fast because we learned later that's not how you.
Oh my God.
But it's a yeast extract that's got a very odd flavor. And I remember my mom was working in the tuck shop at our elementary school, and she started spreading the sandwiches with, just like a peanut butter sandwich, and they were like, stop, what are you doing? And they said, just a little bit. So you do butter first, and then a little bit of the Marmite, and then make the sandwich. But I never acquired a taste for that. But I did come up 3 things I loved. One, we'd always have as an option for lunch in school, meat pies, which I loved. So we'd get a meat pie. You'd take a ketchup, the squeezable ketchup bottle, you'd stick it in the meat pie and squeeze it full of ketchup and then eat it. And in elementary school, man, that was heaven right there. But then also fish and chips. That was the first time I'd really had that in a fresh kind of way. And that was amazing. And then they'd have beetroot, as they called it. They'd have sliced beetroot on their hamburgers, which at first we were like, what the heck? But we really started loving that as well. So those were 3 very positive experiences there. So
pickled or sweet? Sorry? Were the beets pickled or sweet?
They were fresh. Yeah, they weren't pickled or anything. Just fresh, cooked,
fresh beets,
sliced, and put on top, kind of like a layer of cheese, but it was a round slice of beet on top of the hamburger. And it was good. I mean, it was really added an interesting flavor to it. So
I'm so intrigued.
Yeah. So those were great. And overall, it was good. Vegemite or Marmite, whichever it was in that country, was probably the worst of it. But Milo, the chocolate mix, I did Nestle's Quick prior to, but then it was Milo there, and I actually got to where I liked the flavor of Milo better. So it was a great experience, just trying stuff and finding some things I liked better.
Next stop,
we went back to Houston, and then after Houston, we went to England.
Okay.
And England was a whole different kettle of fish in terms
as it were.
Now they had, again, it was either Vegemite or Marmite. I'm just going to say they had Vegemite, but I knew hands off on that. I didn't
Marmite.
go there. But what I did find when my parents would go out, they would give me this thing called a Fray Bentos. That was the company, Fray Bentos steak and kidney pie. And I actually loved that particular steak and kidney pie, even though the kidney was pretty strong, but I got used to it and had a blast with that. but then we did try the mushy peas, and even the mushy peas with mint. And neither one of those would be something I'd turn back to. It's like, I'll mush my own peas, thank you. You don't need to do it for me. And then I don't know why you'd add mint to peas. That just didn't really quite.
It's a very English thing.
That's right. And but it was funny though. One of the things, just the differences in terms of even the butchers in England versus the US at that point.
Sure.
There was a butcher shop right in front of the bus stop that I go to every day. And I remember they'd bring out the meat from the freezer and stick it out in the front window, hanging off of a big hook.
Yeah.
At one point, they had this cow tongue on the hook, but we watched it throughout the week as it didn't sell. It started to go darker, and finally kind of a green color. And they'd still bring it out in the hopes of selling it. And we were kind of like, okay, I'm pretty sure in the US that would have been tossed. I don't know. And again, I'm sure it's changed now. But at that point in England, it was like, they kept bringing it out. And I'm just like, when something starts turning green, that's meat. I think that's probably.
When the tongue tries to lick you back.
That's right. You've got a real
probably not a good sign.
Yeah. But there was, even at that point in England, there was a Chinese food place that was mind blowing. I mean, it was way better than any kind of Chinese food I'd gotten in the US. And I remember we'd go there a lot of Sundays after church, and man, all Sunday, I'd be looking forward to getting there and getting this crispy duck thing they had with a certain kind of plum sauce that was just mind blowing for me. So yeah. So that was that. And then we headed back to the US, but then I went to Latin America, and in Mexico, of course, I thought I knew all the food because of Texas, but I was running into all sorts of things again, because it was a limited Tex-Mex menu at that point. So I hit pozole, which I love today. I actually make it myself, and it's just an amazing soup that with pork that is just mind-blowing. And you can add, like, there's 10 different things you can add to it after you get your bowl. You can add all these different things to it that just makes it a really fun meal for groups as well. So pozole was mind-blowing. There were so many foods in Mexico that were amazing and that I had never heard of before. And so that was a food extravaganza there. I remember my roommate and I were, one time we realized we're gaining weight as we're there living with Mexican families. And as we thought about it, it's like, maybe it's because of the fresh tortillas that they'd get like right before the meal, and we'd each have like 6 or 7 each per meal. Maybe that might be because they were hot, fresh. And the way we knew how they were fresh is if we put it on your hand and do this, and it would roll up. I mean, it would just roll right up. It wasn't kind of, sometimes the ones in the grocery store that you get kind of are a little too hard to do that. These would roll right up, and you'd take a bite, and it was like, okay, this is tortilla heaven right here. So but that was awesome. But then when we went to Honduras, it was.
Would you describe yourself at this point as an adventurous eater?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. For sure. And in Honduras, I had to be, because I was on a little island there, and mostly we'd have black beans that hadn't been completely cooked, because it was a young girl cooking our food, and she didn't, so they were always slightly crunchy. And then there'd be little bread pieces, but on the bottom would usually be little mold spots. So we'd pick off the mold spots before we ate it with our beans. I lost 20 pounds in 3 months there for some obvious reasons, but they would, on special days, there was one day that we looked up on a post where we'd eat outside, and there was some fish up there with flies all over it. And we're thinking, okay, hopefully we won't be having fish soup tomorrow. But the next day, sure enough, we had fish soup, and we ate it, and I didn't get sick, thankfully. We did pray the missionary prayer. I don't know if you're familiar with the missionary prayer, which is, Lord, I'll put it down if you keep it down, was the prayer. So we prayed the missionary prayer and ate it. The funny thing was I checked with a biologist later. She worked in canning in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And I said, so why didn't we die after we ate that fish? I mean, we should have died. It was covered in flies. And she said, well, I bet it was salted. Was it salted? I said, yes. She said, the salt killed all of the maggots that they put into that fish. So by the time you ate it, the salt works.
Yeah,
salt.
Dead maggots.
It kills them. Yeah. So that's what saved me there. But yeah, I had iguana there, I did try a hot banana soda, which I would not recommend to anyone. I think hot or cold, it really just wasn't a great idea for a soda.
Banana soda.
Yeah, it was really bad.
Okay.
So that was that was Latin America. But the weird thing is, Mexico really nailed it in terms of seasonings and a lot of exploration. It's kind of like you got France and England next to each other, but their culinary traditions were different, shall we say. Well, it was the same with Mexico. Somehow in Central America, Mexico is kind of more akin to France in terms of their exploration, the stuff they came up with. And actually, honestly, the French ruled over Mexico for a time. So I'm wondering if that may have launched them to a different level of food exploration. I don't know, but their food was just, with the chilies and with all the seasonings and the variety, there was good stuff in Honduras, but it wasn't the same as the food in Mexico. So yeah. But that was good. Should I tell you South Carolina real quick? I mean, I'm taking you a long way.
Hey, no. This is it's a life story in food.
All right. Well, I'll take you to Mozambique really fast, Southern Africa. They thought using an egg rather than letting it become a chicken was a really bad idea. So they just didn't have a lot of foods from Mozambique that used eggs. I mean, they were influenced now, but that was not the traditional stuff. It was like, why wouldn't you let it become a chicken? And then there's a lot more nourishment there than just in an egg. So, but what they did is they used all sorts of leaves, like pumpkin leaves and things like that, in different sauces that they'd mix with coconut, because they had tons of coconut. So these coconut sauces with things like pumpkin leaves and other leaves that I'd seen people just toss were really good on a bed of rice. Or they'd have this mealy meal kind of thing, because it wasn't like, it was kind of like unleavened bread in a way, except it was more closer to like malto meal that stuck together a lot better. So you'd grab a chunk of that. You wouldn't have forks and knives. You just grab a chunk of the mealy meal, dip it in the sauce and eat it. And I got to where I really loved it. I mean, the sauces were what made that. But I did have one experience, and this is useful, I think, for anybody listening. If you go to a Mozambican wedding or funeral and they bring out something called maheu in a mug, what you want to do, well, I'll tell you, my wife decided when we first took a taste of it, and it was kind of like fermented malto meal. Okay. So my wife took a sip and decided her strategy was going to be just to sip it for the rest of the time. I said, forget the sip it. I'm taking it all at once and I'm done. So I gulped it all down. I was finished. And then the host said, oh, you like it? Here's some more, and filled my mug up again. So my wife's strategy is definitely the way to go with the maheu. But yeah, it was kind of a malto mealy alcoholic beverage that, and they put it in big canisters with sugar and put it in the back of their garage for a while until it fermented, and then they'd serve it at different events. So definitely that's the way to work with maheu, though. Just sip it at a time. Don't gulp it down. So when we switch from there to South Carolina, just a couple of things there. I mean, there were so many different kinds of food. There was something called frogmore stew for the particular area we were in, which was pretty cool. But the thing that really blew my mind there was
to South Carolina.
Sorry?
When you got to South Carolina.
When I got to South Carolina, the shrimp and grits there, which I'm happy to see that it's starting to be, pick up in other places, because it was mind blowing when I had it there. And some of the family recipes they had there for shrimp and grits just were incredible. And then the other thing that was mind blowing that I hadn't had before was barbecue that was pork, which, in Texas, it was mostly beef, pork, and vinegar-based sauce versus the tomato-based sauce. And there's this place called Schoolhouse Barbecue. If you're ever near Myrtle Beach or Florence, South Carolina, go to Schoolhouse, because it's an all-you-can-eat place. And oh my gosh, it's just insanely good barbecue. So awesome experience there, and just love those things a lot. And that's kind of, then that brought me to California, which of course, here there's all sorts of stuff. So, I probably enough of my journey for right now, but those are the different things.
Fascinating story of your life in food. That it's.
Yes. Oh, and I'll tell you one time, do you have a time that you got sick after eating food and it was the food?
Gosh, yes.
All right. Why don't you tell a story, and then I'll tell a story from Mozambique about that as well. So yeah, what was one example?
My younger sister, Deborah, spent a couple years living in Japan.
Okay.
And my parents decided to go visit her, and I was living in Los Angeles, and they said, "Why don't you join us?"
Okay.
Right. I said, okay. And so I joined my parents as we went to visit my sister in Tokyo, and she basically showed us around. She was comfortable there. She spoke the language. Have you ever been to Japan?
I have not. I would love to.
It's fascinating. One of the things, however, that's most disconcerting is that
for the Western visitor, yes.
For the Western visitor is that the language looks nothing. There's nothing about that language that means anything.
Yes.
And so you can stand in an urban environment surrounded by information that means nothing to you.
Zero. Yes.
The restaurants at least give you I know that's a restaurant because they've got, all that lovely plastic food in their windows. And the plastic food is quite remarkable. Wow, the incredible detail. Wow, it's amazing. But the way that addresses are done, if you don't know somebody, I don't know how you'd get around that place. It's terrifying. And I went back there a second time, and there's a story that I will tell during this podcast about my second visit to Tokyo. But my family, my dad had a rather adventurous palate. And so, yes, I've got an adventurous palate right along with him. And street food is always rather intriguing. And we were visiting, I think it might have been Kyoto. And there was a guy selling squid on a stick.
Sorry, that's awesome.
I don't know. I wasn't in the mood. And my mom said, go ahead, have some squid on a stick. And I said, I don't know. No, have the squid. And I had the squid on a stick. And within about 90 minutes, oh man, it was bad. And did not enjoy the next 2 days in Tokyo.
I understand.
And to this day, squid on a stick.
That's not my something. Family. When you see that on a menu, you don't get excited. Is that?
Oh no, you go, I think we're leaving this restaurant. Oh no, but it's our specialty.
That's sorry.
Exactly right.
Not a chance.
Gotta go.
Do you have something else on a stick, please? Just not squid.
Yes. So Mozambique.
All right, so I'm in northern Mozambique in Tet province, and we go to visit one of the poorer villages, me with some translators because they had a different tribal language than the people I'd started working with. And so we arrive, and there's wonderful hospitality as always. And then we found out that, this was a really poor village, but that they had killed a goat for us for the visit, which means we eat their food. Because there were some kids with slightly distended bellies and stuff. So it's like, all right, we cannot, refuse the food. So they brought in the goat, and it smelled okay, but the odd thing was there was still some hair on the pieces of goat. Like they hadn't quite gotten all the hair off, but it was there. And I'm like, well, all right, I can handle that, you know. But then they bring in the mealy meal I talked about, you know, that they've got. And there was a sour smell to it. And I was like, I looked over at the Mozambican translator that I had with me, and he looked nervous. And I'm like, this is not good. If he's looking nervous, and this is bad. But we went on an 8 because, again, you know, you can't refuse that. So, you know, and it wasn't horrible. I mean, I was able to you know, eat the goat and not the hair, and set the hair back down. And
we pick the hair out of your teeth later.
That's right. They were ready-made toothpicks. You know, some of the tougher hair was perfect. But then that night, I was back sleeping in a thatched hut, and I had a drive back from that part of Mozambique, this corridor called the Beira corridor, back into Zimbabwe, where we were living at the time. And I'd be driving it solo, and there were landmine, you know, warning landmine signs on both sides of the street, because you know, all the way down, because they just finished they'd had a civil war that just ruined all the infrastructure. There were no gas stations. There was no, you know, it was like, so, you know, I need to get a good night's sleep. So I go in and lay down, and that's when it started. And it was the worst stomach pain I've ever had. It was just horrible. And, you know, since there are no lights, there's no electricity, right? And it's at night. So I have this head lamp, right, that I bring with me, because whenever you'd have to go to the bathroom in the evening, you'd have to have a headlamp, right? Because otherwise
and the dark is impenetrable.
Right. It's dark. It's really not like dark. There's lamps anywhere.
I mean, there's moonlight and there's starlight, but otherwise, nothing.
Dark is dark. You needed that if you were going to look where you were going. So I'm in serious pain, very nauseous. I find the you know, the toilet. Usually it's just a hole in the ground, which I knew how to handle. You know, I could do a further description, but I'll save that for you. But as I walked in, this one, for some reason, and I still don't know why, somebody should explain it to me. But if anybody listening knows why, please tell me. But they had built up the hole so that it was up to just above waist level mud, and then curved over like this with a hole in it, right? So that was kind of weird, because like, I guess I'm supposed to sit on this thing. I don't know. But what was really bad was, as I turned my headlamp over to it, thousands of cockroaches were coming out of it. And I looked up at the ceiling, and there were cockroaches all over the ceiling. It was just terrible. And, you know, I had already learned the skill of being able to hold it for days if I needed to in Latin America. But I remember I was really ill. So
holding it,
and it's not like I could go somewhere else, because I didn't want to end up going like in their front yard or something, or on their crops, or, you know, that would not be a nice thing.
That would not be a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
So night soil. I'm returning the favor.
That's right. I'm just being organic. I mean, come on, what's going on? No, but so anyway, the next morning, I was still in really bad shape, but I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this 6-hour drive regardless. I have got to get back. I can't do another day here feeling this horrible. I got to get back to Harare, Zimbabwe, go visit the doctor, figure out if there's anything I can do besides just getting it out of my system, which it should have been out by then, but you never know. So that was one of the worst meal moments for me, for sure. I did get home safely, didn't have to drive off the road onto the potential landmines or anything like that, and made it through both, you know, the border guards on both sides that you never knew if they were corrupt or not, or would let you through or not. But I made it back home and recuperated. So, yeah.
I have a story that's kind of like your Maheu story.
Yes.
And to kind of, it's in this territory. It's my second visit to Japan.
Okay. All right.
And being an adventurous diner, when I was working for Electronic Arts for the time I consulted for them for a while.
All right.
I was, they brought me aboard to help their game designers think more like story writers. And
I was going to ask if it was related to game stuff. Okay, cool.
Oh, it was great fun. I started out working at their Vancouver studio.
Oh, wow.
And then I got involved on a couple of interesting projects, and I got involved in working on the script for a project that was based in their Tokyo studio, a fighting game.
Wow.
And so we had created a whole deep backstory. And after really months and months of working on this thing, they decided it would be good for me to go to Tokyo for a week and spend a week with that studio, just buttoning up everything. And so, on EA's dime, I spent a week in Tokyo, which is the best way to travel. You get to sit in the front of the plane, and the hotel is really nice. And
exactly,
and,
all your no food. Bill. You don't have to worry about how am I going to pay for this.
Right. So when I arrived at in Tokyo, my host, my immediate boss, who was Canadian Japanese,
okay,
and he was Korean Canadian, and he was working in that office, and that's right. And he said, look, we tend to eat a lot together. Is there anything you don't want to eat? Because they didn't want to cause any embarrassment.
And you said squid on a stick, right?
I figured I could handle it this time. But I said, no. Wherever you guys eat, whatever you eat, I'm there. And so we ate together all weekend. It was great. One of the first nights they took me out for some extraordinary sushi. Have you ever seen Tarantino's movie Kill Bill?
No.
Okay. There's a big fight scene in Kill Bill 1. It takes place in this gigantic, huge restaurant, multi-level restaurant with open space in the middle. And I went to that restaurant.
Oh, wow.
And it was really cool. No violence broke out. But the sushi was great. We had all kinds of great meals. My favorite cuisine in the whole world is anything Asian. I love. I'm so there for it. I just love the combination of flavors. I'm intrigued by every last bit of it. There's nothing about Asian food that I'm not. I'm not interested in.
Yep.
And so this was a wonderful week. It was great, just the best. And the week was very successful. We came to the very last night, and my boss decided to take the whole office out to celebrate.
Oh, wow.
The week. And there was a restaurant right around the corner from the office that they all liked. It had their favorite dish. They all agreed this was the office's favorite dish. And so they made reservations for that. We went, and this is the night before. The next day, I'm going to work the whole day. Then I'm going to get on an airplane and fly for 17 hours back to the United States. So it's going to be a long day. So what I eat today? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And there were about 15 of us, 16 of us. And so they show us to a private room in the back. We're all sitting minus our shoes on tatami mats on the floor. And they bring out a couple of dishes, all stuff very good, a couple more dishes. And then they bring out what they tell me, all right, this is the specialty. This is the thing that they've all been waiting for. And they've all had such a good week with me. They're especially looking forward to see my reaction to their favorite food. We've all shared so much together.
Oh, no.
And it's a sushi. And it's two beige pieces of sushi, and they put mine down in front of me. And my host says, "It's chicken sushi."
Oh, seriously?
He says it's chicken sushi, and I start to laugh. I think, oh, that's hilarious. That's really hilarious. He's not kidding. It's chicken sushi, and now I'm looking at everyone else, and everyone else
nervous.
They've already got the chop. It's in the chopsticks. They're dipping it into the soy sauce, and they're beginning to pop it into their mouths, and they are savoring it. And I'm looking down, and now my boss has his first piece, and he's dipping it, and he's into his mouth, and he's enjoying it. Now he's looking at me because now it's my turn, and I'm thinking, okay, what What is going on here? All right. My first thought is, okay, they love weird game shows here in Japan. This is screw with the guy gene.
Yeah.
Everyone else is eating, it's marzipan. I know it. It's marzipan. And mine's the real deal. And man, just right as it's going down my gullet, that's when they're going to go, oh, here's the joke.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But now everyone else in the group is they're looking at me like, wow, hey, that was great. And now it really is my turn. And now my boss is looking at me and wondering, hey man, why are you hesitating? And I think, oh my God, I'm gonna have to do this. And so I, putting the smile on my face again. Oh, this is great, man. Wow, great. You pick it up and I put it to my nose, and man, it is raw chicken. Oh. It is like, okay, this is raw chicken, man. And now they're looking at me like, it's go for it, man, go for it. My boss tells me, look, they grow these chickens, they slaughter them themselves. That's what makes it safe to eat. It's fine. You're not going to get sick. You're cool. Just go ahead. And I went, okay. And I dip it in the soy sauce. I dip it a few more times. Better make sure. And finally, into my mouth it goes. And the taste and the smell of raw chicken hits the back of my throat. And of course, the first thought is, we're not staying in here. We're leaving. We're leaving in a hurry. But of course, that can't happen. So, and I cannot have anything on my face that indicates anything like the interior battle that's happening behind my face, behind my eyes. So I'm, and it is everything I can do to literally keeping the smile on my face to get that chicken sushi down my throat. And I do. And it goes down. And I'm sure the look of relief on my face must have looked like I enjoyed something, because they looked really pleased. And then I realized, as hard as that was to do, something far harder stood in front of me. There was a second piece. There were two pieces of chicken sushi. And as miserable as the first piece was, it's nothing compared to the second piece, because now you know what's coming.
That's right.
That's what makes the Maheyu so problematic. It's because there are no surprises.
That's right. It's like,
everything.
Yeah.
And it was the second piece, as I've thought about, that the second piece of chicken sushi has stood for many things now in my life. It really is. It's the experience when you suddenly realize, oh my God, this is going to be exactly as bad as I think it's going to be. Yes. And worse, because now I get to anticipate every awfulness.
Yeah.
Chicken sushi. That's man. Story.
Well, hey, just, one of the things that I've appreciated about the New Testament, just because I'm a pastor, I have to say this, but is that the table and banquets are a big theme, and I've just been so appreciative of that, because something does happen. I don't know if I can say it happens with, chicken sushi, but something does happen when people gather around a table and share a meal. It deepens a relationship. There's something very positive about it. It's a really good time. And, and I'm just, that's one of the reasons, I love food, but I love gathering people around the food and what happens as you're eating together. And that's, I just, it's such a great part of being human. And it's awesome that, a faith does not say, oh, that's too good of an experience. We need to say that that's not spiritual or something. But instead, it's even set up as, there's a story of Jesus even talking about heaven as being like someone throwing a huge banquet and everybody gathered together and eating. And I love that. I think
we understand that, and there is something joyful in our art. We
yeah
about a gathering, not just food, but good food and food that it brings us joy and sustenance and pleasure, absolute pleasure. What is there a meal or two that stands out in your mind that you've had that a meal in and of itself that was special and unique and one of a kind? And
yeah, I'll call out a restaurant around here that the last 3 times we've been there have all been celebrations because it's more expensive, but they've been incredible meals. So it's Odium. It's downtown by the Broad Museum, right next to it. And what's great, the food's off the charts good, but with that is the atmosphere of the place, and their expectation is that you're going to spend at least a couple hours there, if not longer. And so, so Lucas, when he graduated, they didn't have their official graduation. So we took him there for a meal, just the 4 of us. And it was amazing. I mean, all the different food, just incredible. And then we took a couple that we were getting to know, and we ended up spending, I think, 4 hours there, just eating, talking, having a great time. Awesome. And then just recently we took my wife's parents there to just thank them. And again, we ended up, I think we were there 2 to 2.5 hours, just enjoying, they'll bring it in. It's family style, but not like Buca de Beppo. It's not like family style, massive quantities. It's family style, high quality. So you order a number of things and you share them, but there's not a lot of each thing, but it's so good. And you have so much water as you're eating that it's a really pleasurable experience. You're very full when it's over, but you also don't feel like you just wiped yourself out and added 10 pounds.
What's really cool about that is a meal with many courses.
Yes, that's right. And they set it up that way. What they say, like there's this naan that they have that is, I can't believe they even call it naan. It's like off the charts naan, with this butter that is off the charts butter. It's just like, okay, I now there's a new level for butter. But they bring that out at the beginning, and then after that you have sort of like a small kind of vegetable sides. One of them was with this tart with heirloom tomatoes that they only do seasonally, which was insane how good it was, and all the different flavors, And then you'll have a pasta dish, and then you'll have a protein with a couple other vegetable sides, and then the dessert. But you tell the waiter or waitress, they'll organize it and set it up so that it comes out just at the right time. And again, no pressure. You could stay there all night and that would be fine, because that's part of the goal of the place. There's a recognition of that. So it was all 3 of those times. It was off the charts, great food because of the layers of flavor, but the atmosphere was really conducive, along with the good food, like you said, that made it really work. Just talking about the food as well as learning more about each other with the couple, or celebrating my in-laws. So yeah, that's the place that's been huge for us recently. We've loved it. How about you? I mean, what experience have you had recently?
One of the greatest dining experience of my life and my wife's life, also here in Los Angeles. And it's so ironic, because this place was not where you would ever expect to have a great culinary experience. It's
okay.
Right, after the explosion of great chefs suddenly arrived here, one of the guys who had a great restaurant early on was a guy named Ken Frank.
Okay.
Who subsequently he moved on to Las Vegas. He has a bunch of restaurants in Las Vegas. He had a restaurant at the very end of the Sunset Strip called La Toque. And it was a French restaurant. And every year in March, he would do a truffle tasting menu, a 7-course truffle tasting menu. And it was it was not cheap. Well, back at the time, and I just started doing Tales from the Crypt. So I had all kinds of insane money.
Yeah.
And I could do things like that. And
Yes.
damn if we didn't do things like that. And we took a young friend who was a young actress, singer, and we took her to La Toque. And every single course had truffles in it, black truffles in one way or another.
Wow.
And some of the courses, it was like, okay, how? The first thing that they brought out was a shirred egg inside the shell. And so you lifted the shell, and inside it was just dotted with black truffles.
Oh, wow.
And the egg and the truffle, the smell right off, that first dish it blew your mind. Because it was, I did not know what to expect. I did not know what this would taste like.
Yeah.
And that combination of the creaminess of the egg and just the way it was shirred and the truffles, you could taste everything. And it was like a bolt of lightning, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. This is, you are tasting greatness. There was then a scallop with a truffle reduction. I had there was a cheese that was truffled. I had a piece of red meat with a truffle reduction sauce that was extraordinary. Wow. The ice cream was truffled and quite remarkable.
Yeah.
Along to accompany it, I ordered a bottle of it was a bottle of Pinot Noir that was sensational. It just was the perfect accompaniment to every single bit of that truffle meal. It was course after course after course. It was delight. It was delight and surprise because you didn't know what it was going to be. And really, it's truffles and that really, and everything was fun. It was fun and just satisfying and once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
When the last year that we did Tales from the Crypt, we shot in Paris. We shot in London.
Okay.
And they paid me in addition to, they paid for my travel, that they paid for where I stayed in a really lovely flat, and they paid me a per diem.
Wow.
And I didn't get to spend very much of the per diem. I was too busy working, So when we got to the end, there was just all this per diem in cash. And so Helen and I decided to go to Paris, which is where we met. We had met in Paris in 1979 when we were both students.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we decided to go back to Paris and take that money and spend crazy. And so we stayed at the Hotel de Crillon, right on the Place de la Concorde. Just one of the most expensive hotels in Paris. We stayed there, and the first room we had, there was a sound problem, and they were very apologetic. They moved us into this incredible suite where the bathroom was bigger than my house. It was insane. It was insane. There was, when you walked in the front door of the room, there was a desk for your help to be sitting there for callers. There's a room for your help to deal with callers.
Nice.
We went out one night there was a restaurant not too far which had a truffle meal, and we thought, hey, let's compare this truffle meal here in Paris to the Ken Frank truffle meal we had in Los Angeles. Ken Frank blew them away.
Really? Oh, that's amazing.
The truffle meal in Paris did not compare. It was much more heavy-handed, a lot less thoughtful, and
that's impressive.
Creative and inventive. Ken Frank's truffle meal was exquisite, and this was. It made me think maybe I don't like truffles as much as I think.
Yes. No, wow. That's amazing. I mean, that's high praise indeed. Hey, you'd mentioned a movie earlier, and one I just wanted to mention to folks related to food. Have you, maybe you've seen it. Have you heard of Babette's Feast?
Oh my God, what a great movie.
Yeah. And so if anybody that hasn't seen it, you should watch the movie. It's slower paced than you might expect. It's not Indiana Jones speed, but it's well worth it to just watch through the whole movie. There's lots of great food related stuff there. And anyway, I just had to recommend that one. That's still a favorite film of mine. So
as we could go on and on, Randy.
Exactly.
It would not be hard. Is there a food you hate? Let's end on that note. Is there a food that you? All right, let's put cilantro aside, because cilantro isn't necessarily food that people hate. I can't abide cilantro because there's a gene that I'm missing. So it's less a matter of taste and more a matter of absolute just chemistry.
Right. Yeah.
So if we take cilantro off the table, is there a food that other people eat that you think is just, what is wrong with you all?
Well, honestly, durian. I don't know if you've ever tried that fruit, but
yeah.
I can't figure that one out for the life of me, because it smells like, somebody's gym socks that have been left in a dark locker for 3 years, and it's just a horrendous smell, and I don't get it. I'm sure there are other people. I know there are other people that do. But I've heard even in the Philippines, where it's pretty popular, they have a law where you can't eat durian in the public square because of the smell of the fruit. So that one is definitely right there.
Yeah.
And honestly, the other one, which my mom would kill me because she loves them, but I just don't get them. I don't understand what the thrill is, and that would be oysters. I'll eat oysters just because I like the horseradish, sauce, but it's for the sauce. It's not for the oysters. So I don't get the people now. If it's fried, maybe, but just the raw oysters, or I don't get what people love. I understand that other people love it, but I don't get it. And I'm pretty sure I'm just not going to. So that would be right up there too. What about you? What's on your list there?
Gosh, I'm trying to think of something. There's all right. There's something that my palate. Yeah, I things that are soft and mushy. When you get to the soft and mushy, eggplant. I still to this day, ever since those damn frozen vegetables, eggplant. Zucchini grilled, still toothsome. Yes, sure. Is good.
Wait, quick question though. Someone holds out to you and you have to choose one: squid on a stick and eggplant on a stick that's been frozen. So which one do you take?
I'll go back to the squid.
You would? Seriously?
Oh man, the eggplant, I don't get eggplant.
Wow. Okay.
I don't
awesome.
know.
That is not what I expected. So love it.
Everything about eggplant just misses for me. I mean, the name. How do we get eggplant? It's a dumb
right.
name.
Yeah.
Aubergine, at least. Okay, aubergine.
Yeah, that sounds a lot prettier and more interesting than eggplant.
Well, je déteste les aubergines. I don't like aubergine. It's always. I don't understand people who would eat eggplant parmesan. Why would you do eggplant parmesan over chicken parmesan? And even if you're a vegetarian, well, it's soft and mushy. I've never. I so don't get that. Like, what's wrong with you people?
That's right. Yeah, you just reminded me too. My mom loves rhubarb pie, but that's another one. Rhubarb. I don't really get rhubarb either. I've never quite figured out what. It's kind of like dessert celery or something to me. I don't know what it's for.
Dessert celery. That's what it is. It's funny. My wife is English and she likes rhubarb and strawberry rhubarb pie. Rhubarb crumble is something that she makes. When it's seasonal.
My mom. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's not something that I really had any history of. It's didn't I didn't know from it. But now it's fairly regular in my house. Oysters, I rather like.
That's
my son really likes them, and so there's a place right down the street here in Highland Park that does dollar oysters before 7:00, and so we've gone on numerous occasions, and we'll get a couple, like two dozen raw oysters, and then the next thing you know, there we are. We're eating oysters. It depends upon the kind of oyster. Not all they're different, and the big chewy ones are less attractive to me than the ones called Kumamoto, which are these little crunchy ones. There's a nice little briny pop to them.
Yeah. And
yes, if you were to eat a certain kind of oyster with a certain kind of flavor, and someone said, all right, here's what's interesting about this. And it really is a good oyster because it literally has got a flavor of the sea like nothing else. And either that flavor of the sea, it's like a wave splashed in your mouth. And either that appeals to you or it does not. And if it does not, then the whole experience is like, okay, it's about the sauce, man.
Yeah, to me, it would be a slimy wave, splashing in my mouth, and it's like, I mean, I like salt, but I'm not that into, like when you said a briny pop, to me, that's like not my thing. So, and again, I get it that other people are into those things, but yeah, those are ones I just have not acquired the taste, shall we say. But I have found that as I've gotten older, and I don't know if it's just because my taste buds are less sensitive, but there are other things that I used to not like that I really like now. That's just continued to grow and develop the older I get. It's like, oh, hey, this is pretty good. Now I get why people are into this. So.
What did you start out hating that you now love?
Tomatoes is one. Huh. I did not like tomatoes as a kid at all. I didn't like them, couldn't figure them out or anything, and now it's like, yeah, I get it. I mean, like a really fresh, like heirloom tomato with some salt on it, just, a little bit of salt, a little bit of olive oil. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. But as a kid, don't bring tomatoes to me. I don't want to deal with that. So that's one, and even more bitter flavors. I think like, coffee, I would have hated as a kid, but I've gotten to where I really like the different types of coffees and experimenting with that. But that's that bitterness. It's like I have a place now in my palate for bitterness that I think when I was younger, I didn't really have a place for that.
Yeah, and it's funny how one's palate evolves over the course of one's life.
Yes.
Yes. If I think of my two favorite foods, fried chicken. Any fried chicken.
Yeah.
But fried chicken can almost always get me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And running a close second is Chinese broccoli. Because it's got a bitterness to it that's really that when it provides backbone. And so when you pair that with a lot of garlic, a little bit, a bit of oyster sauce or whatever you do with it,
it really, it's got some really interesting flavors going on.
In a bottle of red wine, and I don't drink anymore, but when I did, I loved big, massive red wines with massive acid, huge tannic structure in them, and because it's the acid that would make it. If you were going to lay a bottle of wine down for any number of years, it had to have a ton of acid because that's what was going to make the flavor evolve as the acid slowly evolved.
Yes.
And so, I'm acid on my palate, bitterness on my palate is really appealing. When it comes to coffee, I like really dark roasts, sometimes, usually often without any milk. I love the way the acid just plays, the aftertaste. Is part of the appeal of food, and it's the acid that gives it pop and brightness to it. And it's
you reminded me with the broccoli comment that one thing in Mozambique we ran across when we were on the beach there one day is these kids were selling bananas, but they called them banana masa or apple banana, and we're like, okay, let's try these. And they were bananas with the flavor of an apple, and to me that was perfect because I like the flavor of apples, but the texture doesn't always thrill me. And then sometimes the banana has too strong of a flavor. So to have a banana texture, but an apple flavor was mind blowing. So we'd buy a bunch of them, and that's just the snack we'd have as we were hanging out on the beach. And I said to some of the kids and some of the Mozambicans too, I said, you guys should figure out how to get these to the US. Because I'm telling you, if you had these in the United States, people would start going nuts over them. And they said, well, the problem with them is that they bruise really easily. So they don't transport well at all. And that's why these kids have just cut them off the trees and they're going around selling them to people, so they're fresh, they're not bruised, they're perfect. But he said they just don't transport well at all. So, but those were one of, it was like, again, kind of the combo that I didn't expect, that it was like, oh my gosh, this to me is like, I love peaches are probably my favorite fruit, but I'd say apple bananas close second because of that weird combo that just made it this perfect fruit for me. So
this time of year when we get the super gigantic navel oranges.
Yes.
Those are transcendent.
Yeah, no, those are good.
They have the orange, and I love the mandarin oranges we get just this time of year. There's a certain, they're intensely tangerine-y. Mm-hmm. And it's only for a couple of weeks, and then it just goes back to being this slightly tart or they're too watery.
Right.
And when they they get to that peak of their season, there's and they taste exactly the way that they're supposed to taste.
Exactly. Yes.
Within the industrial farming, which is all about getting stuff to market, and we don't care what it tastes like. You just got to look good. So that's,
well, that's, I mean, even with apples, I've heard that there are tons of varieties of apples in the US that just a few are in the market. And, we've started to see some more, but I've heard that like early on, there were tons of kinds that we may have even lost some of them. But anyway, we could go on forever, but man,
we'll finish on this one last thing. What is, as you sit here today, if I had to say, what's your favorite flavor from your childhood? What is it?
Like as far back as I can go, or
like just at any point, a flavor where you think, God, that flavor, I think of my youth, and it might have persisted into your adulthood, but it started in your youth, and it's a flavor that you always love.
Well, this is more interesting than the other one. So, my first one's like this. There was this rice, I don't know what to call it, thing as a little kid that I remember really liking. But here's the thing that continues with me to this day and goes back as far as I can remember, was the cake that my mom would make for me on my birthday. Huh. And what it is an angel food cake. Yeah. But then she would cut it in half and dig out a space, pour in chocolate pudding, then put the top on, then mix whipped cream and chocolate pudding and put that on top, and then crumble up Heath bars and put that on top of that. God. And it's this amazingly, wonderfully creamy, sweet, gooey mess that even today it's dangerous for me to make it, because I could eat most of the cake in one sitting if I don't resist. It's just this combo, and it's not even special pudding. I tried it with a really upscale, melted chocolate river, and it was like, it's not the same. So I think it's about the childhood connection.
Yeah.
So it's Jello pudding, Jello chocolate pudding. It's very pedestrian, but dang, every time I see one of those, that drives me crazy. What about you? What would you say?
I grew up in Baltimore, and the flavor of steamed crabs.
Oh, wow. Yes.
And that's as a social situation, you don't go out for crabs by yourself.
Yeah.
And you don't go out for crabs with one other person. You go out for crabs with a bunch of people.
Yes.
And then they put the newspaper down on the table, and they put a big pile of the crabs, and ideally you drink a lot of cold beer with it. And sometimes there'll be a crab cake on this, Maryland blue crab cake. Here on the West Coast, they have the Dungeness crab.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a lovely crab. That's not a crab. That's yeah. And sometimes they'll call it a Maryland style crab cake. If you're making them with Dungeness crabs, it's not a Maryland crab cake. Stop that. That's false advertising. You should be sued.
That's right.
No. Blue crabs,
wrong.
which unfortunately, they overfished for over a lot of years and really threatened their existence in the Chesapeake Bay. But they're coming back. They're stunningly expensive, but oh my God, they're made with a combination. You steam them with a combination of kosher rock salt and Old Bay seasoning.
Yeah.
And back where I lived, when I lived in Baltimore, I did not live too far from the Old Bay factory. And you would drive down that part of Reisterstown Road, heading out to that part of Northeast Baltimore, and the smell of the Old Bay seasoning would just hang in the air, and all you could think of was crabs. Crabs. It's like you were Pavlov's dog.
That's right.
And the process of eating the crabs, of course, is not only is it communal, but how you break them. You when you start doing that as a kid, it's very messy. It's not a clean meal, and how you deal with the crab, how you break off all the claws first, and then you crack the carapace open. Everyone's got their own way.
And it's like almost like a seek and find kind of eating experience, because which really adds something to the communal aspect of it, because you're all like opening up, what's in here, okay, I'll take this piece, or different styles or whatever, and that adds a lot to versus having the prepared plate.
Oh gosh, yes.
And
some people, they like the claws. Some people will not go near the back fin because it's too fiddly. The back fin is where all the good action is. That's where the best meat in the crab is. Hey, the same is true of a lobster.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those few crazy people. I will eat the back fin of a lobster, the inside stuff that most people don't even think about. That is where really some of the best lobster meat is there. It's really hard to get to, and you got to know not to eat the gills. Same thing with the crab. But that's part of the joy of eating, isn't it?
Yes.
And on that bombshell, yes, we could have gone on and on and on.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. But we hope
I feel hungry.
Inspired those of you listening to consider how you'd answer those questions, and remember some of those great memories from your own meals as well. And that we'll all, what I hope is, as this pandemic is giving us room, we're free again to do these kinds of things, that will really make some special moments with people we haven't connected with for a while, around a great meal, So.
And as we keep demonstrating, there are things that people can talk about where even if on paper and theory you shouldn't be able to have a decent conversation. Man, an hour and changes went by, and all we talked about was food.
That's right. And that's easy to do when you're eating food. If you're eating food, talk about the food. And that is in itself worthy. And it'll build relationships even with people, like you said, that you would think, I don't have anything in common with them. Well, you both eat. So
actually, and as you both sit there eating, now you have something in common. You're both eating.
That's right. Yep.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.